Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever and whenever you're joining us today for Diversity Network's Work Ethic Inclusion series. I'm Elizabeth Galvin, the content editor at Diversity Network, and I'm really looking forward to our next three guests, who are authors of the Fearless Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Practitioner. They are Roman Rusbecki, a consultant who specialises in diversity data analysis, Tom Vergas, who has a doctorate in business administration with a particular focus on cultural intelligence, and Fiona Krautill, former Director of Equity and Diversity Strategy at the University of Sydney. Hello to you all.
Hello.
Well, between this trio, they have a century worth of experience, as well as also spanning the vast geography of Australia. Tom is calling in from Perth on the west coast. Roman joined us from Victoria in the south of the country, and Fiona is in New South Wales on the east coast. It's their combined mission to encourage our audience today to make a renewed call to action to lead our workplace cultural change with impact and sustainability. So I know they have plenty of practical suggestions and inspiration to share. So let's start then with a brief chat about why you decided to write your book.
Thank you. And first of all, I wanted to acknowledge traditional custodians on the lands in which we're meeting today. I'm coming from the lands of Wurundjeri and wish to pay respect to elders past and present. So the book was really, we all have different reasons for the book, but the book was really written as a dedication to our teachers. When I look at my past history, I've always had a strong woman in my life, whether it's my mother or some of the teachers that I've worked with across the years. We also had an opportunity to learn from each other as we put this book together. Tom's Cultural Diversity Awareness Series was the very first seminar I went to in 1997, and Fiona I met in my travels back in 2006 while she was working for a leading bank. It's also a contribution to the practice in Australia. It's one of the few books in the last 20 years that I've seen that really understands the Australian context. And finally, the book was also to pass the baton on with tension, is to really care for the work, but care for the people who are doing the work, those who are new to the field, those who are looking for some guidance, and those who might be at the crossroads and looking to sharpen their skills. So they're three of the reasons that we've written the book, and each of us will have sort of different reasons. So I might pass it on to Tom next.
Oh, great. Thank you, Roman. For me, primarily the reason for writing the book, Elizabeth, was a legacy piece. I've been a practitioner now for close to 30 years, 32 years, and I'm coming now to the sunset of my career. And it was around how do I just pass on all the things that I've learned on to another generation of people so that they may learn from the mistakes that I've made, but also the things that I've learned to help them along.
And for me, similarly, I'm at the end of my career, I guess, and I guess reflecting, I came into the space believing that there was equity, particularly for women in the early 80s, and through school, through university, thought it was level playing field. Then I hit the workplace and learned from then that, in fact, it wasn't a level playing field. And from then, I've been passionate about creating a more equal and equitable world for my children, my grandchildren. And so the book for me was really my learnings along the way, my journey. I started life as a scientist, then moved into the equity space. And I'm having to navigate DEI storms, resetting and reframing DEI work, depending what's happening in the internal and external environment. And I also am mindful, I stood on the shoulders of practitioners who went before me. And I am really keen for those practitioners that go ahead of us to stand on our shoulders so they continue to do this really important work.
They're very inspiring answers, and the book is unique as well, isn't it, for having that Australian context, which sometimes is missing in cultural workplace change books that are published. So it's unique to have that perspective. Also, can I ask a question leading on from that's being discussed at the moment about how do we navigate the current DEI storm. And I guess your book has come at exactly the right time, hasn't it? Why is it important to be fearless for workplace cultural change in 2025?
I might start actually. When we thought about the book Fearless, we worked together for 3.5 years to write the book, including 5 retreats. And we grappled with the title, and we came to the point that fearless was a state of mind. And earlier in our careers, we may have been more reckless than fearless, but fearless was also a reflection of how we saw others do the work. So speaking the truth can be costly. An Aboriginal friend of mine, it took her a year to be able to speak publicly after the no vote for having a voice in the Constitution. And as is disrupting power and privilege, and where there's an intentionality to keep things the same or the way they are, which is resistance. So all of us have a pivotal moment, and I often think I was very late to the scene watching Ted Lasso, the Believe poster, that change is possible. We are eternal optimists. We look at changing one room at a time, and often I say, don't wait for leaders, they're not coming. You've got to really look at leading self. So the challenge is real, the DI storm. You can't rationalize the irrational, and I am concerned about the safety of practitioners doing the work. Resistance have been around for decades, so when we look at our experience in practitioners' lens, we understand the system we're operating in, we learn to work in the fog, and good practitioners always find a way to survive. I'm a real fan of tempered radical leadership, of deep connections and laser-like focus. And this year we need to slow down and really plan a little bit better. So I'll end with sort of 2 quotes that I often think about. One, every obstacle is for the ultimate good, which is an old Greek saying. But then also Winston Churchill around the joy and glory of the climb, knowing that the path will be ever lengthening, ever ascending, and ever improving. And you'll know that you might not get to the end of your journey. So they're sort of some of the thoughts around the DEI storm, and we have been thinking about it, and people want to have the conversations about it, and they want to know what to do.
Thank you. And I should clarify actually for our international audience about what you said about the no vote. So last year in 2024, there was a referendum in Australia for Aboriginal and Indigenous people to have a voice in Parliament, a specific voice in Parliament, and to be recognised in the Constitution. And it was voted against that to happen. So that's what you were referring to, wasn't it, Raymond? Tom or Fiona, would you like to share your thoughts about being fearless in 2025?
Yeah, so I think for me, there's never been a more important time to be fearless because we are in this polarized environment. We've never been more diverse and we've never been more divided in the world we're living in. And I think as practitioners, we need to be skillful and we need to have courage. And what I've seen in the time we've had in Australia, which has probably been the last year, initially with the vote and then with a federal election, which we've just come through, which again had the potential to be really divisive. So as practitioners, one of the things we had to do in the current storm was really, but it was like we needed to encourage our leaders in Australia to take a stand. And through listening to the lived experience of our people and networks, they were able to share their experience of increased racism, increased homophobia that was coming at them from the community because of the divided political debate that was happening. And that inspired our leaders in our organisations to say, hey, we really need to decide, are we going to stand up for the inclusion that we say we have? And in fact, that's what we've seen. We've seen Australian organisations double down at a board level and a senior leader level with the inspiration of that lived experience voice and the D&I people themselves, creating that strategic intervention. So skilling our leaders to speak up and challenge racist or discriminatory comments, creating that safe space, and also empowering our leaders. So with every D&I storm comes a wonderful opportunity if you've done the work, and like Roman said, you've got a strategy in place. People are really clear what you're wanting to create. In Australia, wanting to create that level playing field where everyone can thrive and fully contribute. And if you can create that in your organisation, you can weather these storms.
Thank you, Fiona. Yes, we should also mention as well, there was a federal election in Australia in May, and the current Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, was voted in again, and in fact mentioned in his election speech about the importance of diversity and inclusion, didn't he? So, Tom, what do you have to add?
Well, firstly, I want to ensure that the audience listening, I appreciate we have a worldwide audience, and we are not being by any means ethnocentric and purely only referring to what's happening in Australia. So the pandemic was global, wasn't it? Do you remember that? So when the pandemic first started, my brother sent me a quote from Vivian Green, who's a poet, a British poet, who said, it's not about wanting the storm to pass, but it's learning how to dance in the rain. Yeah. And I found that quote really useful during the time of the pandemic. So I think about this current DEI storm, it's actually just learning how to dance with it, because this too will pass.
That's very important to remember, isn't it? Thank you for those 3 insights. Well, in your book, you explore approaches to drive systematic DEI change. So what key insights or actionable steps does the book offer to help navigate obstacles and create meaningful long-term change?
In the book has 2 key frameworks for driving organisational change. The first one is our 3H model, which comes from a lot of the work I've done on leadership and culture change, where we hear a lot about we need to engage hearts and minds, which is really important. And so our 3H model is we need to engage heads, we need to engage hearts, and what I'm passionate about is engaging heads. There's an awful lot of talk in the DEI space, but in fact, our job as practitioners is to empower others, empower leaders, empower staff, create that safe place so everyone can speak up and feel and stand up. And so our 3H model is really important. The head is data. The evidence base is really important in the current world we're in. So it's really important to be data literate in the DEI space and use data, because a significant number of the people that you're trying to influence will be data driven. What we also know is without heart, without heart, you cannot shift the mindset. And what we've learned with heart is storytelling is so powerful. That lived experience storytelling, that lived experience allyship, where allies share how they've created that space, really important to shift people's mindsets to understand that they have a role. It's not someone else's issue. It's actually we all have a role. And storytelling and data is really important. My 3rd H is hands. So my 3rd H is actually empowering people by assisting them, particularly, for example, at the moment, allyship, inspiring people to be active allies in the current storm, as we learned to all dance in the rain, is really important. So what can I do as an ally? We want people to be continuous learners in the D&I space. The more we know, the more we realise we don't know. We want people to stand up, speak up and stand up when they need to, when they see issues around them, they see racism, they see discrimination, they see microaggressions. We've all got a role in that. And we want everyone to be part of the solution. We want to create that level playing field. And so we actually share in our book practical case studies. There's a whole lot of examples from our collective lives. So we have lots of examples in the book of how to engage heads, how to engage hearts, and how to engage hands. Practical case studies, practical stories of our stories from the trenches, and the shifts that we've been able to achieve working in organisations and with organisations.
Yep. And I might add a little bit to that, if that's okay, because when we came together, we're actually all in 3 different areas. I was more of the head person because of my experience in data, and I came from a family of analytical chemists. And I had to really think around, Tom brought a lot of the heart area. And when I talk about data, I now talk about data in the human experience and how to bring empathy and more compassion, which I was doing, but probably not consciously. And then the hands part, Fiona was very big on. And I started thinking around how do we practice that in 2025 around how we might share the load, how we co-design, how we initiate, how we involve others. And I'm usually the only white male who'll turn up to an Asian leadership forum or an anti-racism forum or a menopause network meeting, because I think to be a good leader, you really need to understand the experiences of others, but you actually need to do something. So then when we look at the models, and I'll just briefly touch it before passing on to Tom, the leading self-leading teams and leading organizations, is how we merge those two models together. And if I were to look at some of the fearless qualities, traits, and practices under each area, leading self, teams, and organizations, the two that really come to mind to me in 2025 is grit and data literacy and leading self. And in leading teams, it's co-design and translating complexity, our current environment. And leading organizations is overcoming systemic resistance and living the values, who shows up when it gets tough. So it's funny, we wrote the book, it took us a few years, but they're still very relevant and current even today. So we found the book to be quite timeless in terms of its practice. And with all those three finally is that if you're good at leading self and working with teams, you build trust, respect, and connection with people in the organization, you take them with you. If you're leading teams and you're harnessing those diverse perspectives and experiences, and when you're leading organizations in the three coming together, that's where you get your real disruption, where you address the structural and systemic inequities and exclusion. That never sleeps. So we never sleep too. And that's why, in terms of rounding back to the storm, is that we look at sharpening and always practicing those skills. So Tom has some really good theories around the model too.
Yes, well, I think you both covered the theories in depth. And I think what you can see, Elizabeth, from the theories is that we touch on both the personal and the structural. So systemic is about structural change. It's how do we understand the organizations we're in? How do we understand the organizational culture? Because really that's defined as the way we do things around here. So hence we tend to always look at starting with ourselves so that we can in fact examine our own lenses and how we look out at the world. And then through that, how do we then look at bringing structural change? And as both Fiona and Roman have spoken about it, our models talk about that with examples, case studies on how to actually execute that.
And Absolutely. It's interesting because we're all non-conformists. So I think when people pick up the book and they say, oh, I've got a lot of bedside books sitting at my table, probably 5 or 6 of them, and I can't get through them. And people say, well, how do I engage with the book? I said, well, maybe start at where you need to, maybe the legacy piece, or go to chapter 5 where you look at how you might be able to lead teams better, or go to the examples where you might do some data calculations. And so it's a very interesting way that we've presented the book, is not just go from start to finish. It's actually to go to the areas that you need a real hand in, or really need to revise your practice.
Yeah, and can I build on that? I think we've also focused, as well as the organisational maturity journey, because there is a maturity journey that organisations go on in the D&I space. And we've got a 3-stage journey: getting started, getting strategic, and embedding. And we also have done wanting to share with the community that practitioner journey as well, from when you come to the field in your first couple of years, where it can be you're passionate, but you're also on a big learning curve. And then as you navigate through your career, we've got a number of frameworks and checklists and things to help people assess where they're at on their current maturity of their journey as a skillful practitioner as well, and a fearless practitioner, as well as the organisational maturity.
I think it's a good point you made as well about inclusion, including everyone as well, isn't it? That is the way to make that systemic change, isn't it? Appeal to hearts and minds and hands, but also to include everyone and to ensure that everyone knows inclusion is for everyone. And that's the only way to progress.
And my experience is whether I'm in the coal mines working in mining, or whether I'm in a bank working with investment bankers, or whether I'm at the university working with amazing academics, everybody cares. Everyone wants to feel included. And so you can connect with everyone, in my experience of them, that if you can actually, that's what we're trying to create at the end. And I think back, to how our Prime Minister framed his election speech in Australia and probably globally, we want unity.
Thank you. Thanks for answering that. You touched a bit about maturity, Fiona, but how do you have longevity in the field and stay fresh? Let's finish with one positive takeaway from each of you to inspire our audience today to keep going in this work, no matter how difficult it might seem.
I might start then, actually. I'll keep it quite short. I walk 10 kilometers a day. I've been doing that for 9 years. And I listen to music all day while I work, and it just sort of keeps me still and grounded in a chaotic world at time. I also speak to trusted peers 2 or 3 times a week, just to always check in. And I want to finish up with a quote, because people who do this work for a long time are drawn to it, and there's a lot of disruption and a lot of failures and successes. And Daniel Dennett's got a great quote my wife gave me, was that the secret of happiness is find something more important than you are and dedicate your life to it.
That's very powerful.
It's very powerful. I think for me, it's recognizing the small milestones, the moments that matter. When you've changed in the D&I space, you can change someone's life every day. When someone shares with you that, hey, this happened. I actually asked to go on this training workshop and it was approved, and it was like because you'd empowered them and worked with them. I think in the D&I space we have very big milestones as we're driving that system change. But it's those small moments that matter, where you can change people's lives one person at a time, that keeps me going, because it says to me you are making a difference. Sometimes the pace is slower at an organizational level, but there's always moments within working with the people that you're working with in space where you can change someone's life in a day. So yeah, that's what drives me. That recharges my batteries, as well as walking on the beach. I'm very lucky.
Thank you, Fiona. And Tom, what about closing remarks from you?
I listened to Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, speak about 25 years ago. And he talked about his experiment on gratitude and the data that showed that what a significant impact it makes having a gratitude practice. And I've had a gratitude practice ever since. So I find that keeps me grounded and grateful.
Well, I think our audience today will be very grateful with what you've all shared. And we really appreciate your insights and unique insights as well from Australia, particularly in 2025, where the global political situation affects us all, doesn't it? So thank you very much, each of you, for your time today. We've been speaking with the authors of The Fearless Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Practitioner. They have been Roman Respecki, the consultant who specialises in diversity data analysis, Tom Vergas, who has a particular focus on cultural intelligence, and Fiona Krautill, former Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Strategy at the University of Sydney. Thank you all very much for joining us.
Thank you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.